Good Erev Shabbos. Rishus, with the permission of friends old and new, we continue in our sojourn through Pirkei Avot. Today, Erev Shabbos, let's try to introduce some of my chidushim in Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Levitas Ish Yavne Omer. Rabbi Levitas, a man from Yavne, said. First of all, who was Rabbi Levitas? You should know, Rabbi Levitas is not mentioned anywhere else in all of Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. In fact, this is the only statement by Rabbi Levitas that we can find in all of Shas. Nevertheless, we do find his name in Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar and in a similar Mishnah as mentioned in Avos de Rabbi Nassan. But let's really analyze in depth what Rabbi Levitas says. Rabbi Levitas Ish Yavne, Rabbi Levitas, a man of Yavne, said. What did he say? Me'od hevi shefel ruach. Be exceedingly humble. Shetikvas enosh rima. That man's end is for the worms, or is worms. Meaning that when the body decomposes, the body will be filled with maggots and worms and it will be consumed by them in the ground. Not a very encouraging statement. Be humble, and if not, your end is food for the worms. I'd like to suggest the following. First of all, why does Rabbi Levitas use the word Enosh when he talks about man? I know the word Adam, man. I know the word Ish, man, a person. But Enosh, where does that word come from? It comes actually from the third generation of Adam's grandson, Adam Shais, and then Enosh. What was so special about that generation of Enosh? Now, according to Rashi, during the times of Enosh, that was the time when mankind started to profane God. Excuse me. By the same token, according to others, during that period of time, according to the Rambam, Enosh and his generation began to start worshiping idols, the stars, the moon, and the sun. Essentially, during the time of Enosh, there was a departure from the spiritual to the mundane. Whereas all of the world recognized beforehand God's dominion and control and hand in the world, in the time of Enosh, they were mistaken and started to pray to other deities in place and instead of Hashem. According to the Medrash Rabbah, 4 things actually changed in the time of Enosh. And one of them was that man's body first began to decompose and rot in the grave. Until that time, man's body was preserved. But only in the beginning of the times of Enosh did bodies start to rot. So perhaps that's the reason why. Comes along Rabbi Levitas and he says that be exceedingly humble because, and what does he use as the word for man? Shetikvas enosh, that the hope of mankind is but worms. Ultimately, Enosh, this first designation of people, was the first designation and directed by Hashem for the decomposition of bodies by worms. Let's try something different. Again, let's look to the Torah to analyze this dictum. Rabbi Levitas says, Ma'od hevi shefel ruach, be exceedingly humble. And why? Shetikvas enosh rima. Where is he getting this? Shetikvas enosh rima, that the end of man is worms or the maggot, in contradistinction to this, that you should be exceedingly humble. And notice the terminology that Rabbi Levitas employs. He uses a double terminology. He says, hevi shefel ruach, ma'od hevi shefel ruach. Be exceedingly Be very, very humble. Why the double terminology? So let us look to the Parsha of the Meraglim, or Parsha Shlach in Bamidbar. As we all know, the Meraglim corrupted their report about the bounty and benefits of Eretz Yisrael. They believed in their own arrogance. They knew better than the Ribono Shel Olam. And what did they do? They came back and they reported falsely, instilling fear in Bnei Yisrael. But what did they say? Vayetzu dibas haaretz. They reported slanderously on the land. Asher toru, so that they toured El Bnei Yisrael lemar, to the children of the people of Israel, saying, Haaretz asher avarnu bo l'suro haaretz eretz ocheles yoshval. The land that we spied out, it is a land that swallows, it consumes its inhabitants. To counter these statements of the Meraglim who spread lies about Eretz Yisrael, came along Yoshua and Kalev, and they say the opposite. But what do they say? Now let's look into the words of the Torah, because it's unbelievable. Nish sakloiben. What does Kalev and Yoshua say? Haaretz asher avarnu bo l'suro, the land that we passed through to tour, Toiva haaretz ma'od ma'od. The Torah employs the same two words, the double terminology of ma'od ma'od. Through Kalev and Yoshua's humility and truth to the mission of God, they counteracted the arrogance of the Meraglim who spread lies. If you want to counteract arrogance, ma'od ma'od, the Torah tells us. Comes along Rabbi Levitas and he says, Ma'od, ma'od, have shafal ruach, be exceedingly humble. What's the end game here? What befell, what occurred to the Meraglim? So the Torah tells us, Vayamusu ha'anoshim, and those men of Enosh, those men, they died. Who moitzi dibas haaretz, who spread lies about the land, evil lies, ra, b'magefa, in a plague. Comes along Rashi on that pasuk, b'magefa, on that word b'magefa, and he tells us what happened to the Meraglim. That worms and maggots crawled out of their mouths and went to their navel. Ma'od ma'od heavy shafal ruach, be exceedingly humble. Shetikvas enosh brina, that the fate of man is worm food. Good Shabbos.